Bada bam, we are live, and I'll just put a little hello to anyone that comes and says hi to us right now.
Right
Uh,
on.
Jade, hello,
Hello, hello.
dude. It's been a minute since you and I have hung out. Well, like intimately, like hung
Yeah,
out
I
and
mean
talked for
we're
more than just like.
we're on like the calls for lesser known comics and stuff like that about like release schedules and all that kind of stuff, and it's usually like just in passing, like, oh hey,
Yeah,
all
it's
right,
it's a it's like work buddies, you know what I mean? Like we're just like
yeah.
work friends, you know. We're just like, hey, good seeing you. I saw your stuff the other day. It looks awesome, dude.
Yeah, that's
Um,
that's that's more or less everything, totally.
so now
um
to like hang out and just get some good vibes on. You're our second guest for this as well. Actually, Doug Knight was our first
oh,
guest.
nice.
Yeah, which was a phenomenal episode.
That's
We used to
awesome.
do
Yeah,
a
Doug's such
spinner
a funny
wheel.
dude.
Yeah, and it was just like the thing with that episode was so great. It was like Doug, we used to do a spinner wheel,
Hmm.
and I would just select a random character and be like, "We're doing this random character from a spinner wheel," and I'd record the spinner wheel and all this.
Yeah.
Um, and Doug it landed on Daredevil, and then I go and tell Doug, I'm like, "Dude, we're gonna draw Daredevil tonight. I'm so hyped, and like, it's my favorite, one of my favorite characters." And he was like, "Dude, for real?" It's like Daredevil. For those of you who don't know, Doug is legally blind, but he is the
Hmm.
one of the best comic book artists. Like he's one of those guys who's so good at what he does that like you have no excuse to not be like reaching for your dreams. If this guy is tattooing and again,
Hmm.
like you contributing to the punk anthology, like with Escapolypse, it's such a cool fucking story. Um,
Yeah.
so just him landing on Daredevil as a legally blind like comic book artist, I was like, God damn it, this would happen on my show. I would pull this trigger, like that would be the thing. Um, we have a lot of hellos going through here too. We have
Nice.
Clarissa saying hi. We have Vorpal Grin saying hi. We have Vincent Yusan saying hi. First time on the stream. Dude, thanks for coming to hang. Um, Jade is amazing. So I'll just start with that. And I don't know how to draw. I don't know how to draw. So this whole show is about me just trying to learn how to draw. And we were doing these cool, just like random, like just we're drawing superheroes and just superheroes and everything. But now we're trying to like get to the nitty gritty. So um I really wanted Jay to kind of teach me how to do like faces and where to go about making a face and like continuing the anatomy of lessons on this aspect. And as an art teacher, I'm just trying to get a free lesson at a Jade. Just
No, man, it makes sense. Yeah, like faces are something I've been drawing since I was like a really young kid. Like, so when I was in the second grade, my parents kind of like saw that I was having some problems like paying attention in school because I just wanted to fucking draw all the time. That's
oh
what I
yeah.
wanted to do. And so they actually got me lessons with like the high school teacher. So I was like taking additional lessons on like drawing, and so like he asked me like, what do you want to know how to draw, like what do you want to learn? And I was like, I want to draw comics. I was already into comics at that point. And he's like, okay, we got to start with the basics. I'm going to teach you how to draw a face. And so like second grade, boom, I learned the basics, and I've just been doing it since the second grade over and over and over
Nice.
again. And so I kind of have my own like system at this point that like makes the most sense to me. And you can find tutorials and stuff that teach it in a different way.
Mhm.
Um, and I have mine that makes sense to me, right? So like there's the anatomy basics for when you're like observing, like you're
Mhm.
looking at someone's face and you want to draw them. And then there's the anatomy basics to just be able to make your own faces, like storytelling in comics and stuff. That's not necessarily, you're not like looking at somebody, you're kind of pulling parts from your brain out, but you're able to like plug them into something like a framework that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So there's kind of like is essentially kind of two different paths potentially to how to think about drawing faces. So we can kind of like go down whichever pathway you kind of want to go down. Sometimes it's easier to start with just thinking through the observational one, and then take that and you can just kind of run with it in your own, in your own way.
Okay. Yeah. So like the observational one, I mean, I figure I should start with that. Like whatever, I'll see what works the best for me at that point. You know what I mean? That'd be exciting. And
Yeah.
then it's kind of like learning, like, I don't know. I always have to relate something to music since I grew up as a musician. I feel like faces are like your like major scale that you just need to learn. You know what I mean? And my
I think that's a good analogy. Totally. It's
yeah.
it's one of these things, so I'm a professor at Montana State University, where I teach drawing, and I teach it as like foundational level, and then I teach it advanced, and so on and so forth. And so like foundational level, like drawing faces is like something it's like core. It's super important, because when you start to learn how to draw faces, all these other doors of drawing and other avenues that you don't necessarily think of, even if you have no interest in drawing faces past it, it's so fundamental to just like learning the basics of drawing is drawing faces. So I think like you're totally right. It's the scales of
Yeah.
the visual art.
And it's
Totally.
like you're getting the emotion out of your face on everything. You know what I mean? So you have like, you do the happy face is major, fucking sad face is minor. You know what I mean? Like you just go into like random.
I like that. I like that. I'm
Oh,
gonna
my
steal
camera
that.
follows me. I just got this new camera. I'm testing it out tonight. I didn't know it would follow me like that. That's
Can
rad.
you hear it like moving and watching you like a raptor?
Yes. I'm trying to like dodge my dog from jumping on me too, and I was like, "What the? This is gonna be fun." Yeah. All right. I don't know. Are you able to show your drawing board? I don't know if, or is it going to
Let's
be
see.
too similar just to
I
lift
got
it
a
up?
sketchboard on me, so I could kind of like, a sketchbook, so I could kind of do
Nice.
that.
Nice. All right. Perfect.
Okay?
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I
Whatever
mean, I
works.
could do that. So I just have. Let's. I'll just kind of do the basic shape real quick, and then you can tell me if you can see it or not.
All right. Cool. 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 All right. Yeah, we
Can
got
you
a good circle.
you
Kind
can
of
see
a
it?
little
Well,
bright, but I can see it pretty well.
see if I can angle it down or something like
Ah,
that.
see, that's better.
Okay.
Yeah. There you go.
All right. So the basics that you want to start with, and this is just like the framework, right? So the framework that you want to start with, picture like an egg shape,
Okay.
and then picture it upside down, like an upside down egg shape, essentially. So like
Okay.
the point is facing down. The point is kind of like your chin, right?
All right.
So just start off with that. Just like basic egg shape.
I think I
And
could
maybe
do something with my camera. We'll see. I got like a fancy camera for this new show I'm gonna be doing. And oh, wait, here we go. Wait, that's not the right direction. Wait, dude, check this out. Bam. All right, cool. Maybe this will work.
there it is. Heck yeah, man.
Yeah, yeah. There we go. Oh, fuck, my piece.
Cool. My other recommendation, and you can kind of see it on mine, is with faces, go big. Go
Go
big.
big.
You
All
want
right.
you want to use more space than not enough. The whole idea is like if you get too crammed, being able to see parts of like how things connect to each other is going to be way more difficult. So if you can like
Oh,
draw, fill up more of the page, that's better for learning this kind of stuff.
okay. Cool, cool, cool.
Cool. Perfect. Looks like a beautiful egg shape.
Hell yeah.
So next step is you want to split it right down the middle. So so right down this. There you go. Perfect. And like this is essentially like creating like our guidelines,
Okay.
so that we have something to look, to make sure and check against as we get going. And then you want to split it the other way.
Okay. Right down the middle.
Yeah, right down the middle. And the thing that happens so much of the time is you'll either do it like too high or too low, and you've done it
I
too
think I
high.
did too
So
high. I did way too
come
high.
down a
All
little
right.
bit.
Let's see here. All right. Bam, filling that gap right there. Cool. So I'm gonna go like right here. Is that better?
Yeah, that's much better.
All right, cool.
And Vincent said in the chat, he said, that's so awesome learning the basics from grade 2. Yeah, I mean, learning it from that young was pretty amazing, because then I was able to just consistently like build on the skills and the basics. So like what I'm teaching Brandon right now is literally what my art teacher taught me when I was 7. So like it's, it's this skill that I've just had, and just slowly build on it over time. Cool. All right. So we have our face split. Perfect. That looks excellent. So the next thing that I like to do is I'm going to use some terminology, and so like the unfortunate bit is you don't get like all the lead up in my teaching curriculum to like
Yeah. I'm just gonna
get to
skyrocket right in, like
because like faces we teach like 8 weeks in to like the
okay, yeah.
semester. So like we don't start students off with that, right?
It's just like
So
open
there's
the
some
middle of the book, and I was just like, all right.
but no, it works. So when I use the term gestural, do you more or less have an idea of like what gestural drawing means?
Yeah, I figure like you're like kind of posing in a sense, like there's an act going on, and like
Yeah, it potentially. Most of the time when we say like gestural drawing in the kind of art world and stuff like that, we're usually meaning like loose, rough, quick sketches. So
oh, okay,
it's not very defined. It's the whole idea is that you're moving fast, right? And that you're
okay,
not like perfecting it. The way to like kind of think about gesture is like it's this idea of general to specific. So it's loose, and then you tighten up over time. You tighten the drawing up over
nice.
time, but you got to start nice and loose, right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to kind of like lay in where the eyes are, and we're going to use kind of like gestural shapes of the eyes. So like
Nice.
essentially the eyes, that line that we created right down the middle horizontally, that's the eye line. So the eyes exist right in the middle of that line.
Okay.
Not on top or below, but right smack dab in the center. So the eyes like intersect it. So I'll do like a quick little drawing to kind of give you a sense of it, because then
That's why I can see why people try to put the eyes like above that line or make that line like 3/4 instead of half. You know what I mean? They
right.
forget like you have a head. You know what I mean? They just picture hair there, I guess, or like in like a hat or something.
Totally. And not like so many people don't think of like how much just fucking space there is on the top and
Yeah.
like back of your head. It's just there's so much space back here. And so whenever we're drawing, like students will either, you'll either do it like way too high or way too low. And you'll either look like the henchman or you'll look like the brainiac and have like way too big of a head, right?
There you
So
go.
okay. So when you're drawing the head, this looks, my proportions are a little rough. But the whole idea here is just to give you a sense of like, it's just loose. It's just kind of like laying in roughly where they are. So the head, when you're looking straight on for proportions, is 5 eyes wide. So if you took that same length, and mine, like I said, my proportions are a little off, but I was making them bigger just so you could see them. And I'll kind of draw it here. So if you took that same shape, like size of your
Oh,
eye,
I
and
went the other way.
multiplied it, and multiplied it across, you'd get, it's 5 lengths wide.
Oh, that's wild.
So
Okay.
then you always know, like, are my eyes too big, or are they too small? This would be like an adult, right? So like if you're drawing like a little kid, do like a quick sketch, like you would make the eyes way bigger, right?
Mhm.
Um, so like a little kid, eyes are bigger. So, when you're drawing and you're like, why does my character look too old or too young? Start with the eyes.
Huh.
Like go back to the eyes, and you might think like, oh shoot, the eyes are too big, making the character look too young, or the eyes are too small, making them look too old, right? The eyes are one of these things like by like, I can't remember what age it is. It's like age 5, they stop growing. That's the size of your eye, and it's done.
Forever.
And so your head is just developing around it. So your eyes, everything will change proportions in your face, but your eyes stay the same size.
Wow, that's insane. I didn't even know that. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Um,
Excellent. Yeah, that looks great. Okay, so once we have that kind of eyes laid in, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to keep like working through the proportions of the face. So between that eye line and the bottom of the chin, right? So that kind of base area of the chin, split that in half one more time, horizontally. So roughly yayish. Excellent. Okay. And then again, between that line that you just created and the chin, split it in half one more time. Okay. So now we have, you can kind of see where we're going here. We have our nose and we have our mouth, and there's where those lines are created. Okay. The next guideline that we're going to do is now vertically from the inside of your eyes, of where you kind of like laid in your eyes, you're going to create lines that go all the way down. So if you can see mine, like straight from the inside, I'll try and get it. It's reversed. So the inside of the eye and then down.
The inside of the eye. Okay, cool.
The inside of the eye.
Right.
Yep.
Whoa, this is blowing my mind right now, honestly.
So from the inside of the eye, and so then you can see where it intersects that nose line, right? Yeah. And so that's the width of your nose. Your nose, like your nostrils, will never go outside of that kind of line. They're going to be right in that, like that sweet spot of right in between your eyes.
That's sick. This is just like, it's like everything's just making sense in my head. That's amazing.
And it's also like most of the time that's how wide your mouth is too. But like if you're just even looking at my face, you can kind of see if I were just like draw that line there, my mouth exceeds that kind of like guideline a little bit, like the edges. So like in general, this is where I tell students, like, your nose and your eyes will more or less conform to those proportions, but your mouth, some people have bigger mouths, some people have smaller mouths, so mouth is one of those things that you just kind of have to observe and see like how far out it goes or how far in it goes, because some people do have like a little mousy little mouth and it doesn't really ever exceed that guideline, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one we're going to do, and this one again is like, it's the where you put the line. Some people say there's a prescribed proportion for it. I don't necessarily think so, because I've seen people with eyebrow lines that are really high, and I've seen people where they're really low, as compared to like their eye. So it's up to you for this one, for the sake of like just learning. You kind of put it wherever. So essentially, like you just create another horizontal line, like just a smidge above the eyes, and that's going to be our eyebrow line.
Nice.
Cool. So now what we can do is on the sides of our heads, we're going to kind of lay in approximately where our ears are. So your ears and your nose are proportionally the same size. And so what I'll draw this real quick so I can kind of show you. So what you're going to do is you're going to kind of create this like C shape. And this is just, again, it's a guideline. You can reshape this as you need. So that eyebrow line and the bottom of your nose line. So that's where the ear starts at that eyebrow line and ends at that nose line. Boom, right there. Yeah, exactly. So your nose and your ears are the two parts of your face that are always growing. They never stop. And they always grow at a proportionate rate. So your ear and your nose are like linked, and so they'll always be the same size. So again, like when you're designing characters, if your character looks too old to you, it's probably, you go back to the eyes, but you can go to the nose. Like the nose is probably too big. Same thing with the ears. The ears might be too big and it will feel older. Similarly, if your nose is too small or your ears are too small, it'll feel the inverse, right? Younger. So you can always kind of like tweak that depending on the age of the character that you want to do. Like if you want, like more of a younger, like 10 to 11, age kid, your ears and your nose are going to be a lot smaller. Your eyes are going to be much bigger, and your jawline won't have fully come in yet, and so it'll be a little bit softer, right? And it'll just, like, those things will just make, will help determine the age of your character depending on how you want to do them. Cool. So that's pretty much it, Brandon. That's the basics. Everything else from that is now we take, I'll make a better sketch so that I can kind of follow along with you real fast.
Okay.
But essentially from there is now like, this is, we just did our guidelines. And so from everything after that is all about like shaping the stuff. And so I can kind of like help you a little bit with the shaping. I'm just catching up on my own to make a
Yeah.
prettier sketch.
Dude, that is insane because everything you just said, like, I don't know, like lights went off in my head. Like I've never thought about that or heard those explanations before. And that just makes so much sense. Like I've seen like some drawing tutorials and it's just like you do this and then this or like how to draw comics the Marvel way, that book. And it doesn't explain stuff like that.
No, I
Or
mean
even stuff like this. Like I was using this anatomy book. Like I'm sure you've seen it. Like
oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And like there's pieces of all that stuff that is essentially like taking this information and distilling it in a way that's palatable to that particular audience. Like drawing comics the Marvel way and stuff like that. It's using shorthand because it's cartooning, and so like cartooning at its core is essentially like observational shorthand. So like there's these tricks and stuff like that to create observational drawing, but like okay, so for instance, just to kind of give you like this thought, right? Okay, what's that?
Okay, looks like a happy face. Smiley
Yeah,
face.
it's just a happy face, right? Is that based on any observational drawing whatsoever? No, like there's no face. I'll draw it in black so it's a little easier to see, right? So there's no face that looks anything like that, right? But it's shorthand. It means it's a face. We understand it, like it connects in our brains that that means face, right? So essentially what that is, it's like taking that, the proportions that we just went over and simplifying it and synthesizing it and abstracting it to a degree that's just enough so we understand it's a face. Right?
Yeah,
but
that's Scott McCloud explanation when he goes over.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So you can take that and you can make it, like a little bit more complicated and add some ears, add some nose, and now we're like building off of it, right? But it's still shorthand. It's still like, essentially like a cheat code to get us to understand face, right? But it's all still stemming from that same stuff. And so then you get to like the Marvel way, and like there's the way that like we draw noses and mouths and stuff like that in comics. So like we have like this kind of stuff, right? So we have like the eye is kind of squinting. We have essentially like we have the nose with one line on one side, shadow on the bottom, the upper lip. All that stuff is based on observational drawing, but it's like it's distilled down. So like like the nose, drawing it like that, essentially what this like what that style is meaning is that like this side of the face is in shadow because that's the only way we'd be able to see the nose, right? And so like those books are helpful at like taking observational drawing and then making it appropriate in understanding the shorthand. But you're totally right, it's missing those that like just fundamental foundation of like what we just went over, right?
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I missed, like, this is the first step I needed before I went to being like, okay, now let's try to draw Daredevil, you know what I mean? Like, or Spider-Man and whatnot, like even when you're doing like a Spidey mask, you have to have some idea of the proportions and things like that.
To make it feel, like the best Spider-Man artists are able to like make it feel like there's a face underneath that thing, there's like curvature, so that when Spider-Man's at profile, it's not just just a rounded form, but like you can see the kind of curvature of the brow and how it recedes to the nose, and then how a mask might change that a little bit, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
the interpretation of real life, yeah, and that aspect of the cartooning, yeah, it's transforming it through your brain and kind of just like what you're able to do is what you're able to put on the page, basically.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
and I mean, so like, what draws you to having a more cartoonish style than like Jim Lee, Jason Fabuk, like Tony Daniel style?
So yeah, like so when I'm drawing like characters and stuff like that, let's see if I have any. I mean, we're talking Daredevil. I might as well like I did my own version of Daredevil, and it's in this sketchbook, so that's
Nice.
perfect. So there's my
Oh
Daredevil,
yeah,
right?
dude, that's sick. Yeah, I love that. I loved when you posted that because you did the
So
yellow
like
suit too.
yeah, I love that. Everybody gets shit about the yellow suit. I
I
love the
know.
yellow
I
suit.
love the yellow suit.
The,
I think it's so
the thing
cool.
that I dig about the yellow suit is it looks like an old school boxing uniform, which is what I like. I'm like, yeah, because his dad was a boxer, and so I like that
Yeah.
just connection. I think it's such a cool little design. I will be the first to admit the all red suit does look sick. It's
Yeah.
amazing. It's
Yeah.
iconic. I love it. But I love the original Jack Kirby yellow suit. Like I
Yeah.
dig it. And so
Yeah.
when I'm drawing, I'll come in as close as I can, like drawing the face and stuff like that. Yeah, there's
Mm.
a fair level of like of abstraction. I think what is fun about that of doing that versus like doing a more naturalistic kind of style, like Jim Lee or whoever, is that you get to say more about the character right off the bat. Without me needing to like write anything, I'm telling you how you feel about the character immediately, right? So like
Mm.
if I make a character with a much bigger jawline and a smaller head, we can start to like imagine like okay, he's a brute, like we use these kind of almost like stereotypes of abstraction to fill in the blanks about the character. And the other thing that's like awesome about that is then when you're writing, you get to flip that narrative sometimes and like give
Mm.
the audience like counter to what they expect, right? So like take that stereotype of what they're thinking you're doing in your drawing and change it. And I think that can be like really fun.
Nice.
And like
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Because I really want to go for like I feel like a cartoony form is really what I would love to like get down more than that perfection art style. I guess did you learn how to draw like life models like to a T and get
Oh
those
yeah.
shadings and those
Yeah,
textures?
yeah.
Well, yeah, you got like a master's in art, so I'm
I
sure
do.
you've done everything. Yeah. So yeah.
I have 2 degrees in art. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
done it all. Like
You've
so,
done
like the
everything. Yeah.
naturalistic, like drawing lifelike and stuff like that. Yeah, yeah, I can do it and all that kind of stuff. I think that with doing stuff like that, how do I put it? I like I like doing that stuff. I like drawing naturalistic, and in my sketchbooks and stuff when I go out to go like sometimes I'll go to a coffee shop and just draw people that are sitting around and stuff like that, and sometimes I'll draw them kind of cartoony, to practice certain skills and stuff, and then sometimes I'll draw them just as I'm seeing them, like not trying to filter it through any kind of like style, just drawing what I see. And that all of it feeds itself. It's the more you can like practice drawing naturalistic stuff, the more you can take that stuff to when you're drawing more abstracted cartoony stuff and make the cartoony stuff feel real. Like even like artists who are doing stuff that's super abstracted, like think Charles Schultz and the Peanuts, right?
Hmm.
Even thinking about that stuff, like there's elements of those cartoons that like Snoopy's doghouse or the environments or even just parts of the character that you could like you could think of them as a three-dimensional thing, even though it's a two-dimensional just flat drawing, right?
Yeah.
But like Charles Schultz also was able to draw like realistically and think about the natural world, and he was able to take his understanding of the natural world and simplify it, and then do it in a way that like you could the approximate dimensions of Charlie Brown's head even though
Yeah.
you've only ever seen it from one direction essentially, right? He could just understand that. So like the more you can kind of do naturalistic drawing and practice that, it will like feed into the cartoony stuff. So
Mm.
like for instance, so I did this. I haven't posted this one yet, but I did.
Sick, dude. I love Kyle. He's
Yeah,
my favorite too.
he is straight up.
That's right.
He's the artist. Like that's like
Yes,
the no
exactly. I don't
brainer.
know why people don't like him more. You know what I mean? Why isn't he most
Everybody's
popular one?
yeah. The other ones are like all cops, and I'm like, yeah, but Kyle Rayner's the artist, and if your power is based on imagination, shouldn't you be a damn artist? Like it just makes more sense.
I don't know. My camera just did. Yeah, dude. That's my whole thing about it is that it's like, I mean, Kyle is what every creator like. If you're drawing and making a book, why wouldn't you want to like interpret that struggle into a superhero
Yeah.
book to really because especially with the DC book, you can't like establish a lot of that, but through Kyle, you can.
Mhm.
He's
You
the one
totally
that you can
good.
do all that, and you could do
Yeah.
the craziest, wackiest stuff into anything because it's
Yeah.
really letting that artist embellish and take control of the character.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
What's your favorite
So,
like what was your favorite superhero? Oh my bad, I mean to cut you off in general.
oh no, that's okay. We can take a tangent. Man, I don't know. Like I go back and forth on superheroes all the time. Of like, oh, that's my favorite, and that's my
Yeah.
favorite. When I was a kid, I kind of liked them all. You
Mhm.
know, I think that like you know, gun to my head, I might like say Batman, but and then I
Oh,
also
sweet.
have my Batman on me too.
Nice. That's fucking cool.
They made him a little bit
That's sick.
skinnier, and I kind of like brought the nose piece down. I really love the way
Yeah.
that the Robert Pattinson cowl fit, and it was kind of clunky. It was almost like too big on his head, and I kind of fucking love that.
Yeah, yeah. No, hell yeah. I love that helmet.
But yeah, so probably Batman, but I think that there are way more interesting characters too. Like Kyle Rayner's way up there. Um, Hellboy is. I don't know that like you can call him a superhero though.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. I know what you mean though. That it's in that universe of superhero-ness.
yeah,
You know what I
so
mean?
he'd be up there too. It's tough, I guess.
Nice. I feel like all my superheroes, maybe this is why I need to learn how to draw faces, but they all have like a mask covering everything. Like I love Spawn's face because of that texture behind
Oh,
like
totally. Yeah,
what's going on. And I love that Gene Simmons like look and everything. Um that's
yeah.
a
I
cool
think
that
that
like
like
I just want to know how to draw Spawn really well in my life and I'd be happy as shit, Like
but yeah, I mean, I think that like that's the thing with like practicing drawing like faces and stuff. So like I'm gonna kind of show the Kyle Rayner again. So like essentially in drawing out his face and stuff like that, so much of this stuff is abstracted, like the proportions and whatnot that we kind of went over. I like totally changed and did different things because I wanted his face to feel like different behind that mask and stuff like that. Similarly, like other observed things, like just thinking about like how basic shapes when you take a block and you kind of like turn it and stuff like that. And if like in school we learned to draw like lots of still lives, but like from different angles and stuff. So you would like learn, okay, here's this just simple like cube. Now we'll look at it from this angle. You'll look down on it. You'll look around to it, and so you get all these understandings of like just the shape in space. And so like even when you're doing something like a hand, if you can just think about it as like a cube, and then like okay, where is it in space? How is it turning? And all that kind of stuff. It like makes everything else make more sense
yeah.
and make it feel a little bit more real. So like yeah, so that was kind of like larger point about that.
Well, help me understand that then. Like posing a face, like we did one facing forward, and that's the
Yeah, yeah.
basic, bulk of it, and that's where you would start and adding the detail. And I could get,
Hmm.
through that part. That's a whole different discussion at that point,
Yeah,
detail wise. But like if I'm trying to angle a face or do a pose of some sort, how do you start your measurements and like what's different?
sure. So like here, I'll just draw like essentially the shape. Um,
Does your eggshell shape take any different like approach or anything? Like
it does a little bit. So
okay,
essentially, like I'll kind of I'll draw it in just black so you can kind of see it a little bit better. So we'll do kind of like that. So those proportion guidelines, those stay, and like, your ear and your nose are going to stay proportionate. But like how that changes is that like dead on, they're just flat lines, right? Because of the perspective of the way that we're looking. But as soon as you turn the face, those lines curve. So they curve around the face because again, our head is kind of curved, right? So like if we're looking, slightly, this would be almost 3/4 view, right? So like this is my center line, so that's where the nose, the eye, all that kind of stuff is going to be, and those lines just essentially curve around the face. So like if I was doing, like ear to nose, and this is where like so many people think that like, oh, the nose isn't the same size as the ear because when I look from the side, it's higher or lower or whatever. And it's like, well, that's using a flat line. But when you curve it, you can see that like the bottom of the nose and the bottom of the ear line up.
Oh, wow.
So like those lines just curve. And there's not a perfect, like, I can't tell you how much they curve or anything like that, because like everybody's face is slightly different, right? Like this, from the stand, like straight on, more or less some of those proportions are just kind of like universal. Everybody, that's just how it is, right? But then as you start curving the face, you'll see that like, oh shit, everybody is a magical snowflake. Totally different, right?
That makes sense. Okay, let me switch my camera to see if you could see how. Okay, so I'm also thinking of like the eggshell aspect too. It looks like the butt of it is like kind of bigger on when you do it to the side. Like whatever direction you're going is like the back
Yeah,
of the head kind of sticks out, right?
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So the back of the head kind of sticks out.
And and I think that's what I was doing those curved lines on this one a little bit, like the first one, because that's what I've always seen is having that tilt up towards the back
Mhm.
with other books and tutorials. So let me do halfway here. And then, ooh, this is a good question. Is there a general rule for where the hairline should start?
Oh yeah, so that's a super good question. So if you can kind of like there is and there isn't. So like one of the like ones that you'll find in guidebooks and stuff like that is like to divide the head into thirds, but like that gets really ambiguous and whatnot. So
Yeah.
ultimately what you kind of think about is like the curvature of the head. So the hairline, I'll draw it on my example to kind of give you this idea. So essentially so your hairline would start roughly there, and it might be a little lower, depending on your character or whatever. Essentially, it's at that point of the head where it starts to curve back, like where it starts to make that curve. That's right where that hairline is. It's boom right there. The head starting to curve. That's where it is. And so
Oh,
some people like their hairline is, they have a pretty narrow forehead and there's not a whole lot of space there. And some people have like me, like I got a big ass forehead, and that curvature is way the hell back here. And so really it's just, looking at the head and thinking about where that curve, it starts to kind of like zip back instead of be just kind of flat, if that makes sense.
yeah. Okay. That's wild. I never the hairline. I would just kind of toss it up. I never really think about it. Um, and then that kind of fills up a lot of the side of the head too, huh? That's
Oh yeah,
basically this entire
yeah.
part.
The other thing too with hair is, so like this eggshell, if you think about it, the eggshell that we've given you is, or that like that I've kind of expressed, is essentially the skull. So when you add hair, think of it like a hat. It adds volume. It's even more volume to the head. So like when I'm adding hair to like my guy here that I'm drawing, kind of show you, even just like short hair, it's going to add extra volume to the head.
Oh yeah, you put it on the out. Okay, you build off of it. You're not just putting it within it. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And it's,
So
like it takes practice to figure out exactly how much you need to kind of like add on to it and stuff like that, and to understand all that stuff. But that's like overall the basics of finding that stuff out.
And how do you? I don't know. How do you do a fucking nose, dude? I suck at noses.
I mean, yeah, it's the same thing. Like the nose, if you kind of think of it as like that, almost like pyramid idea. Um, when in doubt, I think my number one piece of advice is always just break it down to like what shapes you think would build a nose. So or build that particular thing. So like, okay, I'll draw like a quick little example of this. So like from the angle that we're currently looking at, right? Something along the lines of like this. So I started off with this kind of like teardrop shape that would be, I'll turn my nose to the side a little bit. So it would be kind of right there. So you can kind of see this kind of teardrop that is like the bulk of the nose. And then on my nostrils, they're kind of like wings on the side, and so they add just a little bit more, and so I kind of like treat them as like circles. So you have the kind of teardrop of the nose and then the circles on the side that builds out. And so like when I'm drawing, like in the early stages, I just leave everything as really loose shapes, and then I can like kind of almost carve away at like that the shape to get at what the thing actually looks like. So there's the teardrop design. I have the kind of like circles on the side or cylinders, whatever you want to kind of like think of. And then now I'm like going back through and carving through and saying like, okay, that's the actual shape that's underneath.
Dang, that's crazy. I didn't think about that. That's cool. That teardrop aspect. Because I always feel like my nose has come out very just like brick, like Marv from Sin City. You know what I mean? Just like that's how
Yeah,
every nose feels.
that like Roman nose that just like
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's like I'm never trying to go for that, but it's like, oh, okay.
He's got,
So,
I think Marv has like the greatest nose in comics.
yeah,
I
just
have
straight
to
up
say.
memorable as fuck. Like, okay, all right. So we got some lines here. Lines there. Got a little teardrop going. Yeah, not making it too wide. That's the whole thing about it. It's just like
Yeah,
in
and
that swoop.
still using that. Exactly.
How long does it take you to do about? You have a fucking master's in art, so I know like your timing's different, like and shit. But how long does it take you to do like maybe like what you just did, like the Kyle or something?
Um, I usually, so those were all like warm ups to like working the studio, and so like a good warm up, you like want to give it enough time, but you don't want to spend too much time, so
Uh-huh.
that like you actually then want to do the other stuff in the studio.
Yeah.
You don't like blow your load, and you're like, I'm done. I'm so tired now. Oh my god. So like the Kyle one is maybe like took a little bit longer than others. But like in general, you want to do like a 30 to 40-minute warm up.
Okay.
So I did like I've only shown like male characters, but so like here's like a female character as well, and I
Sick
did
Electra, dude.
Electra. Yeah, and
That's
it's like the same stuff. Is there's some differences, not necessarily in faces. Like a little bit, like comics have stereotypes that they use, right? Like whenever I took classes or tutorials with other comic book artists, like the main thing, the feedback that you always get when you draw female faces is like, don't use so many lines, like limit how many lines you use, because you want them to feel more feminine, and so not as many lines as you would like a male character, which I maybe I agree with sometimes, but I also think that like it depends on the character, and it depends on your style too and how you're doing
yeah.
it. But yeah, I mean, like body proportions are a different thing, and like weight displacement is the main.
Okay. Fuck, I can see that. All right.
Like yeah, like it's the center of gravity. Like men's or more masculine figures, the center of gravity is like it's kind of like in our hips, but it's lower, and then a more feminine center of gravity, it's kind of like your belly button, and so it's a lot higher. feminine figures. Yeah, it
Huh.
just changes.
Damn, that's brilliant. God damn, dude, you're just putting. Okay, what about like cheeks? How do you do like cheeks to get that
Sure.
type of structure?
Here, let me flip back to mine. So essentially, I kind of like carved my dude out here a little bit. So like I gave a little bit more chiseled, so it's like a little bit straighter. So again, if I mean, when I was like learning parts of the face as well, the other thing I did is I sculpted a face, so that I could like understand the three dimensionality of a face. So that was
Oh,
like one of the things that like really helped me understand faces, is like as I was drawing, I would sculpt a face. So I understood like, okay, the eyes recede into the skull. So like your character, the one thing I would say on like the cheekbone is that you got to think about like how the eye recedes back into the skull. So your left eye,
uh-huh.
the one that's like on the edge there, it needs to
Yeah.
come in a little bit, and so your cheek
Okay.
needs to your cheek needs to come out, your eye needs to come in, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So the cheek kind of needs to get expanded a bit like that.
Maybe not that severe, and I would like if you can kind of see mine a little bit. You see how like over here, there it is. It's kind of coming in just a
Oh,
little bit.
okay. So it kind of has that like kind of line there to dip into the eye.
There you go. Yeah. That's better.
And then her go like that and kind of do the same thing. So
Yeah,
let
and
me see
then
yours again. Let me see how you did that. Oh, okay. Then her eye kind of just like goes out like that.
yeah, and from this angle, which is 3/4, the nose is going to slightly obscure that eye, right? It's going to like partly, depending on how far the nose sticks out, it's going to cover just a little smidge of that eye. So
So
like
I should wait
they
for the nose.
inside, which is like, so like this whole process that you're doing, like erasing and everything, that's excellent. It's also why like it's a good idea to keep things really loose and not get like, when you're drawing the
Detailed.
face and stuff, is yeah, start drawing like the iris and the pupil and your eyelashes. Like don't even fuck with that stuff until you like everything is laid in, because then you might like get to that stage and you're like, oh shit, everything's in the wrong spot. And then you spend all that time and you're like, well, fuck it, I'm leaving it there. And it's like, no, take the time, fix it, rearrange it. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
I could see that. I could see that for sure. Because I would, I could, I've done stuff where it's just like, man, I have to shift this entire thing like 3 millimeters. You know what I mean? Just to fit right
Mm-hmm.
or something. And you're just like, that's too
Totally.
much. What about that eye right there? Is that better?
Yeah, that's much better.
Much better. All right, cool. I guess my eye proportion's a bit different.
Yeah, when it changes, when we're looking, dead on, right? It's that five eyes wide, and then you turn it, and all of a sudden it's really not that proportion anymore, and the head's a little bit wonkier. So like, even the right eye would be a little bit shorter because you're not seeing all of the eye, right? You're seeing it from like a side shot.
Oh,
And
okay.
so you're seeing more of the right side of your eye and less of the left side of your eye. So when you think about it, like here, I'll kind of draw like a little example of what that would look like. Um,
Um,
so when you're looking at it, so I have it right here. So you see how like I have more of that left side, or I mean right side of the eye. You can kind of see that teardrop shape. And then when we get
yeah.
towards the inside, instead of seeing that other kind of like piece of the almond, we see more of the curve. We're actually seeing like the eyeball itself.
Oh, shit. Shit, that's crazy. That makes
Yeah.
sense. So it's like almost like when you think of like Batman's eyes, they're like this, you know what I mean? But it's kind of just like flipping that or like
Yeah,
reading.
exactly. His eyes are like that depending on what angle you're looking at.
Yeah.
So there's a question. So do you have any tips drawing heads from any angle? It can get tough to draw on an upward angle. Yeah, up and down, like, are really hard. My suggestion is get a mirror and like literally just look at yourself in those kind of like poses and whatnot, observation is like so important to all this kind of stuff, to like getting better at just drawing faces. So like roughly, I'll do like a little sketch of looking up. So all these angles used to really throw me for a loop as well. And I would be like, how the hell am I supposed to do that? And then what I did was, when I was in graduate school, I did this whole series of paintings where I painted myself like 100 times. I did like these little paintings, and I just drew myself and painted myself over and over and over again. And then I eventually like learned, oh, that's where that lines up. Oh, that's how that works. And I didn't understand it until I did it that many times. And so the unfortunate bit is that like there's little tips I can give, but ultimately just like practice is gonna be how you do it. So here, I'll show this. So this is a quick little sketch of looking up, right? So essentially what I've done is like that curvature is still there, like in those proportions, but like they just get more extreme. So I can kind of show this too. So here, let me take a different color. So if you can kind of see it, that curve of the bottom of the ear and the nose is still there, but like the more you tilt the face up or tilt the face down, that angle is going to get more and more extreme. And so it's going to go from like straight, looking straight ahead, to curved to curved to curved to curved to curved to curve, until like it's a total ellipses instead of just slightly curved angle, right? And as long as you kind of keep following that, like you'll be able to see how big the ears need to be in connection to the nose in that extreme kind of angle.
That's wild. That's a lot of work. That's crazy. That's so. But I mean, that's how you get the coolest poses too. You know what I mean? Like you have to put in that work and that effort to really shake things up and get something. I mean, just like those upward shots or downward shots are some of my favorite. But like moving that camera angle is so essential.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, again, so learning all this stuff is just me staring in a mirror and trying to figure out like how the face connects and stuff like that. And so what I think is kind of cool is like, if you look at certain comic book artists' art, you can see pieces of themselves in their drawings. So like the best example is Paul Pope. Like if you look at Paul Pope's drawings, a lot of his characters kind of look like Paul himself. And like the reason is because he's looking in a mirror. Dude, I'm literally reading that right now.
What? We are so synced
book.
up this episode. I love it. Like,
yeah.
Dude,
it's so good.
So good. So good.
If you look at his art and stuff like that, like a lot of his characters, there's something that if you've ever seen pictures of Paul, that's exactly what he looks like. And it like guarantee it's because he's looking in a mirror to get these poses. And so I think that like ultimately, when in doubt, get a mirror, look and put yourself in that pose and just spend the time looking. I mean, a couple of years ago, I did, before I became a comic book artist and started making comics, I was a fine artist. And so I was making paintings and drawings and putting them in galleries. And I did this piece where I drew myself every day in the morning, first thing in the morning for like 20 minutes. And I would do a self-portrait every single day. And I did it for 98 days. And I would change, like I'd look up, I'd look down, I'd look around, and I would just change it to make it more interesting for me to draw. But what that ended up doing is like it cemented in my brain how my face, or how faces in general, look when you are smiling, how the face contorts, or when you're tilted down, the curvature and how all those things connect. And it's like if you can just practice doing that every day, just a little bit, that stuff just gets cemented in your brain and you don't forget it.
Damn. That's the coolest thing I've ever heard. And I'm going to do that.
You should. I super recommend it. Like, students will tell me all the time, like, oh man, faces are so hard. I'm like, you're not drawing enough of them. Once you
Yeah.
draw more of them, they'll get easier, but you got to do a shit ton of them.
Yeah, because there's so much to them, you know what I mean? Like there's just so much to each part, and you could spend a week on eyebrows, you know what I mean? Like you could fucking spend a week or a month on just eyes. Dude, I'm gonna try doing
Yeah,
that portrait
you
a day
should.
thing.
You should.
That sounds fucking sick.
It's so helpful. It really, really is.
Um, all right. How's this looking? This is the first. I didn't base it off anything. I'm just like going with the flow.
No, I think when you're just kind of like figuring it out, like not necessarily basing it on anybody is totally fine. I think it's just plugging in that stuff and just kind of like memorizing. This is how big
Yeah,
this needs to be. This is how big this needs to be, and then
and I could
eventually that
see
stuff
where
is just
like
second nature.
shit needs to be like kind of pulled and tucked and shit. You know what I mean? Like even with
Mm-hmm.
like the head shape and all that. Like
Yeah,
that's interesting. I don't think I've ever kind of been able to notice that so much before.
and
It's
you know
those
the
lines, dude. I would just be like, I would just know about how to do those lines in 3 different ways, but like the
yeah,
explanation behind it, the puzzle piece you put on each one, and then you just kind of work with it. You know what I mean? You just kind of
yeah,
lay it out.
exactly.
That's sick. It's kind of like making sushi. I don't know. It's a weird comparison, but like you just have you got your wrap, and then you put the rice on it, and then you fuck with it. You know what I mean? You just like,
Right.
but you need that base and that like rice fucking there to the seaweed and the rice to do it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it all kind of like layers up on top of itself. But if you're missing that layer, it's just like there's that. It's just going to fall apart, right?
Right. Okay, wait. So tell me, how would I like sculpt her cheekbone right here again one more time? Like
Sure.
something that
Let me go back to that one. So, um, so this would be like a point of like preference, essentially. So really the cheek that you'd want to sculpt would be like from the bottom of the eye, you like in comic book fashion, right? Like there's things that you could do realistically that or naturalistic drawing that would be a little bit different, but in the comic book fashion, they're really the only 2 things that you'd be paying attention to. Like that cheek space is most of the time pretty void. There's like not a lot that you want to do there or add. So essentially what I've kind of done with my guy here, right? So I've kind of like extended that cheekbone just a little bit, and that curvature essentially, if you kind of like look, maybe I can kind of show it on mine, is like if you think about it, your jaw and how everything is connected kind of curves down from your ear, and it curves, connecting to your chin there. So like that cheekbone is going to start at the top of the ear and kind of just curve, and it's going to more or less end. Yeah, I mean that might be a little low, and so like if you can like literally just touch your face and feel where your cheekbones are, and you can kind of feel that your cheekbones go to about right here.
oh shit. That's fucking wild.
So yeah, and so then in comics again, right? Like we want to like leave some room. Uh, the faces in comics so much. There's like the negative space, the area where you don't draw anything is just as important as the area where you draw stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so like the cheekbone, like when the face is turned like this, you kind of want to just not compete for the other information. Like the information that's important is right along this line. This is some like good areas to leave like some points of rest and to not have a whole lot of extra information. So we have like cheekbone, you can kind of depending on how high, like for me, my face doesn't really have very pronounced cheekbones. So some people do and some people don't. But the 2 points that you want to really think about are the jawline and how that connects to the ear, and then the kind of like bags or the eyelids and how that connects to the top of the cheek. Is like the 2 real points that you want to like make sure that you consider when drawing a face.
Huh. That's fucking cool.
And so like your jawline on the bottom there, you've got it kind of like going back past the ear. Like you can feel it. Your jaw ends at your ear, right? It ends right here, that bottom line.
Which sign? This is the jawline.
Well, that's your cheekbone. Your jawline center.
Oh, jawline. Okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
So like you see how on mine the jaw goes right to the bottom of the ear,
Oh,
not past it,
okay.
right to
Oh,
the
I see
bottom
what
of it.
like this
There you
part
go.
kind of.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that part right there.
All right.
Sorry without
Fuck
me
yeah.
being there, being able to like point to it exactly.
No. In
So
fact, I was like giving her a little hair thing, and that kind of wraps into that too. So it could be like,
yeah.
fuck, dude. That just made it like 10 times better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you
Another
mean.
question.
Literally like chiseling until you're like
It's you
working.
start off with the rough elements, and then it's like you're sculpting. You're taking away, you're adding to it a little bit. You're adding lumps of clay. You're taking away lumps of clay. It's so much like sculpting. It totally is.
Gosh.
So since we need to study and practice the fundamental, my question is, how long does it take to master the fundamentals of art? Oh man, that's a great question. So like to give you it kind of like an example. Uh, like a university degree is like what, 4 years, right? But does that necessarily make you like that you've mastered the fundamentals? On paper, it does, but like, there are students that graduate that I'd be like, I don't know if you can really draw a face yet. You've had 4 years to kind of like get to it. Ultimately, that I don't know that there's a prescribed like limit, like time. I think that like it's all based upon your interest, your level of passion towards it, and discipline, right? Art is essentially passion and discipline. That's it. There's no key ingredient or missing thing that's just like this. Talent or those two things in a hyper distilled fashion, right? Passion and discipline. If you have both of those two things for art, like there's not necessarily like a timeline. If your passion is waning, if your ability to create discipline in your own life for that passion, it's going to take you longer, right? It's going to take way longer. But if you have, a desire to do it, and you can like commit to working and practicing every day to doing this stuff, like it's going to go a hell of a lot faster, and you're going to see rapid improvement versus it taking forever. So it's all based upon like how much desire do you have, and how much discipline are you able to commit to that passion. And so, when you see someone who's like super talented or whatnot, it's like because they have like a huge passion and an incredible discipline for that passion. And that's all it is. So it just depends on your level of commitment to that craft. And that's it.
Hell yeah. It's fucking true. It's for everything. Honestly, that goes for fucking anything in life, dude. Like
Oh, it totally
fucking
does.
doing the podcast, doing this stuff. Like I don't draw. I don't this doesn't really do much. I mean, it does a lot for Apollo, but I mean, like I'm just trying to vibe. And it's like, playing music all my life, like knowing I'd have to stay up till 2 a.m. to get something done. But you're having fun, and you know the end result, and you know what you're building
Yeah.
upon. And it's just like you gotta remind yourself that nothing really matters but this in the long run. If this is what you really want, then you have
Yeah.
to go out there and work towards it.
If it's what you really want, like you'll sacrifice, you'll make that time commitment and stuff like that. I don't know how many times throughout like school or just being a professional or whatever, like I've had to sacrifice other parts of my life to make this happen, right? So whether or not that's staying up, yeah, you're right, like staying up until like 5 in the morning, make sure that the thing is right, like that you did it
Mhm.
and you did it to the best of your ability, and it's done right. Or like um most of it's time. Most of it is
Yeah,
just
a lot of
something,
it's time,
is
time and
sticking
energy.
time into something, into it. Yeah, yeah. But like making that commitment, instead of like, oh, I'm gonna go out. When I was in college and stuff, I know a lot of my friends and stuff like that went out and did the party thing. And I'm not gonna say that I didn't party, but like when push come to shove, if there was a project or if there's something I wanted to do and get better at, it's just like, dude, my ass was at the drawing table or at the easel, and that's where I was. um, you know, and I made it happen. and it's like, yeah, I think it just comes down to that level of commitment.
Well, as we begin to like kind of wrap up and everything right now too, fuck, I god damn it, I got involved into this and I totally spaced out what I was just gonna ask you, Jade. I was just like fucking lying.
It's all good, man.
God damn it, what was I gonna ask you? So like how do you balance your time and energy, and like how do you keep up your rest to be able to perform adequately at your craft?
Yeah. Man, I don't know if I'm a good person to ask about rest because I don't. And I think that like that's a thing. Like that for most of my life creating and stuff like that, creating an art was just, it's like an extension of myself, that like I don't feel like I'm me unless I'm making shit. And not just like stuff to sell or promote my brand or whatever the fuck, right? But like
Yeah.
just fundamentally making stuff. And so I think that like I may not be the most eloquent person talking or writing or whatever. I was never the best student, but like I can express myself through what I make. And so that's always how I've like engaged with the world, is like I make things, I put those things out there. Now people understand how I feel about a particular thing, right? Based upon that thing I'm trying to communicate. And so for me, it's like that balance is maybe different than other people because like it's so tied into just how I communicate that if I were to try and like stop doing it and rest, like I would feel like, okay, but now I'm not like communicating anymore, or I'm not being me, I guess. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that like, you know, I mean, I'm not going to say I don't take naps and take breaks from the drawing board when my hand starts cramping up or like my back
But like
is
all your time goes into this. Like whatever energy you have is what goes into this basically. Like you're not.
pretty much
Yeah.
like my father-in-law is constantly on me. It's just like, so what do you do for fun? I'm like, man, I just kind of make shit all the time. He's like, yeah, but that's what you do for work. He's like, what do you do just for fun? I'm like, I mean, I have fun doing it, but like I don't really have time. I kind of,
Yeah.
if I'm not making art, like I don't know what else I'd do with myself, to be real.
No, I totally understand. That's I mean that's why I have now two podcasts and an anthology and a comic and a live
Yeah,
drawing
man.
show and a fucking like I don't know how else to behave or act or I feel guilty when I play video games. So if I do play video games,
Oh,
it's like
totally. Oh,
20-minute spurts, you know what I mean? And I'm just like, I can't be doing this. Like,
I do like I save up all of my video game playing for, so I like as a teacher, I have breaks, right? So like I have a winter
mm,
break and then like a summer break. Summer is like that's the best time to be working and trying to get the most shit done. So like that's not my video game time. But winter, I'm in Montana, so it's like it's not nice to be outside anyways. So like winter break, I just cram anything I want to do that's like not that would be restful into that winter break. So like during the Christmas season and all that stuff, all I'm doing is just playing video games and watching movies. That's
hell
like
yeah. Dude, that's like your good solid break and rest period of the year then, you know what I mean?
yeah. So I
Especially
just
as a
say I'll
teacher
save
as
it
well.
all up.
Yeah, it's like your halfway point between school sessions. It's like
Yeah.
that's when you really need that total shutdown
Oh my
into
god. Yeah.
revamping.
I pretty much just tell everybody in my life, like, you're not going to get a hold of me. Just don't try.
Fucking well, I mean, dude, that gave me a lot of insight, and I've never just drawn a face out of like I'll show you guys one more time, just out of nowhere. Like I have no reference, I have no nothing. I'm just kind of sitting here. Oh, that's cool. I can zoom and shit, dude. That's fucking wild. Just kind of sitting here, just trying to figure out a side face. You know what I mean? And I can see where the nose is a little weird, probably right here. Gotta
Sure.
kind of like tuck that over. And then the small stuff could, and I just dabbled in some eyes and shit. But like I could tell how like the head shape went from out here to like condensed into here. How it
Yep.
was trimmed
Yeah,
down. Like
yeah,
I gave
yeah.
her a little hairpiece, gave her a little fucking ear, and it
Yeah,
seems
totally,
to
man.
be like fucking there. And then this like fucking alien head I made. But it makes sense. Like I could see how it's going to condense into something now, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
but I feel like not only am I going to dip back into this episode for reference, but I feel like other people will too. This was insanely informative, Jade,
Cool.
and I will be making you do this more with me.
Heck yeah, man. Anytime. Like there's tons of stuff that we, the whole wide world that we can draw and work on shit. So yeah, man,
Yeah,
anytime.
my whole
Anytime.
goal is to like start doing my own like little shitty comics. So that's where I'm heading to. So thank you people, fucking Clarissa and Vincent. Really appreciate it. Jade, I appreciate your time and your hangs tonight. Our little intimate little drawing session. We'll do it again soon. And
Yeah, that sounds good.
fuck yeah. Oh, see, we got one more comment. That was absolutely awesome. I look forward to doing it. Yes, fuck yeah. See, we got people wanting you back
Thank
there.
you. Awesome.
But thank you all for hanging out and joining us tonight. Send us your stuff, tag us, and we'll all post up our pictures and have our little drawing session. But
Yeah, that'd be
until next
awesome.
week, this has been Drawn Shit. Thanks for hanging.